Where have you been during the civil rights movement? Attorney Herbert Henderson has been in the front lines. I'm Dan Ringer, and I'll continue my conversation with Herb Henderson right now on the LawWorks.
The following is a production of West Virginia Public Broadcasting.
The LawWorks is made possible by the generous support of the West Virginia State Bar, the West Virginia Trial Lawyers Association, the Defense Trial Council of West Virginia, and by ALPS, providing protection and peace of mind for West Virginia attorneys and their clients for more than 15 years, and FindLaw, offering an online directory of more than 1 million attorneys, plus self-help legal guides for consumers and businesses. Find answers, find lawyers, find law on the internet at findlaw.com.
Last week, I began a conversation at the Greenbrier Resort in White Sulfur Springs with one of the leaders of the civil rights movement. He was not only a leader in the movement in West Virginia, but in the nation. He was an officer in the Army when it was first integrated, and he was the first African-American graduate of the George Washington University College of Law. He served as acting general counsel for the NAACP and served as president of the West Virginia branch for 20 years. My guest is Attorney Herbert Henderson.
I think the West Virginia State National Association for the Advancement of Colored People needs to do something. I think we need a new image. I think there's a crying need for a new leadership and younger people to participate in the affairs of the organization.
Thurgood Marshall, General Counsel for the NAACP, came to Greenbrier County and for the West Virginia State NAACP. And he told them that you can win this case. I think West Virginia is going to be easy to crack. And they filed a lawsuit here. And Judge Moore, white judge, federal judge, integrated Greenbrier County right on the spot. We won the case, and there was riots and fights and prejudice and all. That was a time, the types of things that the NAACP did. But we filed a lot of lawsuits, and we did a lot of them were kind of easy to do because normally a lawyer on the other side would say, you know, it was hard for him to say that's not the law.
But you had to do that.
Yes, yes, and I enjoyed it. I sued, brought suits, and went on. And
You like to pick a fight sometimes?
Well, I remember the students at Marshall, white and black, got together, and they went to the Bailey's cafeteria, and a white girl and then would go in and order a hamburger, and she'd sit down, and then her black girlfriend would come in, and she'd cut the hamburger in half, and they would eat. He wouldn't try to throw them out, literally. And then the blacks went, and I told them that you have to dress nice because you want to go to this white place where hamburgers are better or whatever. And we tried that case. They got an injunction against us in the Circuit Court of Campbell County, and I tried the case about 2 days or so, and the judge ruled in our favor. And that decision was just before the '64 Civil Rights, and I couldn't have done it. Almost every judge and every lawyer in the United States would write me for a copy of his opinion, a copy of my papers. And within a week's time, the 1964 Civil Rights Act was passed. And I was real proud to be a part of it. I spent days and days on it. My total fee on that was that I think about 4 Marshall professors who were white got together and gave me a crisp $100 bill.
For all that work.
Yeah, and I think my secretary was getting $32 a week, and I gave her all of it. I gave her 3 weeks, and I ended up with $8, I think it was. I had to pay the secretary.
Yeah, we laugh, you laugh when you tell these stories, but these are tragedies.
Yes, yeah.
do you stand up against things like that?
What happens is after a while, you get hate. You feel like going on the other side. You feel like violence. You see things and they hurt you so much. And they're just insignificant things. When I came back from overseas, I went to Fort Knox, Kentucky, and I knew some officers that were there, first lieutenants and captains. And they said, let's go. I was getting out of the Army. I was going to law school. And we went out that night. I think it was 3 white guys and myself. Hey, Herb, what are you going to do? I said, well, I'm going to New York. I'm going to have fun. So we had a lot of time. We talked. I met them in the Army. And we went to the airport in Louisville. And I was flying to Newark, New York, where my brother had a business, and I wanted to go there before I came to McDowell County. And they said, you want to eat? Go upstairs in the airport. I said, no, I'm happy as I can be. And we just had fun. Keep in mind, he's all white guys. Okay. I said to the girl at the counter there, I said, I just like a hot dog. I've been over in Japan so long. I said, just give me a hot dog. I have a uniform and all, and I was proud to be an American. And the girl said to me, we don't serve y'all. I said, beg your pardon? Said, we can't serve y'all. I said, well, make a long story short, the 3 white officers with me almost got in trouble, serious trouble, and they raised all kinds of hell and everything else, and it was just one big mess there in the airport. Everybody's looking, said, they wouldn't sell him a hot dog. Look at the ribbons he's got. I said, well, and the white guys were really doing it. I wasn't doing anything. I just want to get out of Kentucky. And I was young, and I was single. And at the time, I didn't feel like I had any real prejudice or anything else. And I got on the airport. It's Eastern Airlines. I remember like it was yesterday. And I remember beautiful stewardess come by. She's white. You know, I didn't care what she was. At that time, I'd date white, green, or anybody else. It really didn't bother. And I was shaking when I got on the plane because of what had happened, the incident and all. And I thought, God, I'm having troubles here. I don't know what to do. So she came to bring me a Coke or something. And as I said, normally I would have made a pass at her. I was a free guy, you know. And she touched me with the Coke. I said, don't you touch me. Don't you ever dream about touching me in any way. Don't look at me. And I call her a white something. And I was really, I had real crazy thoughts. It's when I got off the airport in New York and what I was going to do. I was almost went over because it was just so hard. And I couldn't live with it. And it's difficult for me, very, very difficult. And I had to go back to, because of my white friends, like guys like the guy that took up for me. That's the only thing that ever sold me. Because as I told my Black history students at Marshall at 13 years, I taught that, and we talked about that, and I always tell them, but you black kids, I think all whites are bad, you're wrong. And I tell my white kids, I said, and same thing. You think all blacks are bad, they're not, you know, blah, blah, blah. And you asked me how it felt. It didn't feel good. It didn't feel good. And after between the time I got out of law school, before I went to law school, I came home and I think it's February and March maybe. And I decided to try to get a job in Washington, D.C. because that's where I was going to school for 4 or 5 days. And Fort Belvoir, Virginia was about 40 miles away, and I had put in for a job of what I had done and but no race was on there. And they kept calling me, Henderson, we got a job for you. We want to hire you right away. I didn't tell them I was going to law school, but I could work for 6 months. And they just worried me to death. They called and called and called. Finally, I went down there at Fort Belvoir, and the lady came out on the desk. I said, I'm Herbert Henderson. I said, do you all know me? Because you called me 50 times. She said, you're Herbert Henderson? Is this yours? I said, yeah, that's me. She says, oh, excuse me. So pretty soon a major came out, and he looked at me. He said, "Are you the same, this Herbert Henderson?" I said, "Yes, sir." I said, what's going on here? So he went back and stayed a while. He come back, and he said, "We're going to get back to you tomorrow, the next day." You know me, I didn't pay it any mind whatsoever. But my chances of getting that job after they saw I was white was nil. I mean, it was horrible. Just figure out how, could you live with that?
No. And I talked to someone such as yourself, and I realize that the fact that you have survived till today with all of that distinguishes you from most of the rest of humanity in some way. You're brighter, or you're more at ease with yourself. Somehow you get to this point. And I wonder about the hundreds of thousands of other people.
Of color?
Of color.
Drop
men,
out. They
women
drop out. They drop out. They get 20 years old, and they don't get jobs in the system itself, profiling, petty arrest.
And go to prison for years.
They go to for nothing half of the time. White kid is DUI, and his dad called down there and said, "Tom, hey, he's just had a little fun. Send him come on home." Well, the black kids never had that because the police and the whole system was for the controlled by the whites.
Right,
and so by the time the average black kid, and it's true today, I guess 20% of them have been arrested or something, just piddling stuff like that. And so they really denied an opportunity to be a part of the system. I think they drop out. My point I want to make is they go there and then they go get a job and they don't have training. Or if they get a job, they're the company decides to, we got to let 5 people go, and they look at the black guy and say, "Oh, well, you first, you got to go." And what happens is, and there's some studies being done on it, the blacks between the ages of probably 26 and 35 drop out. They just drop out. They start working. They drink wine. They hang in the street. They do things. They just drop out. And they say, "I can't make it in this world." And we don't know what percentage of African Americans have dropped out, but they're dropping out more and more and more. They're just dropping out. "I can't make it. What's the use? I'm going to be a dishwasher all my life. What's the use? I don't care how good I am or what I do. I just can't make it in the system." So the dropouts. And nobody knows how many they are. And some of them are highly educated and otherwise too, because they just can't fight the system.
Who were your role models as a child?
My school teachers, my black school teachers in McDowell County. She used to tell us and make us say it. That's long before Jesse Jackson. She said, "I am somebody." And she taught us things. So you can be anything you want in this world. And she just taught us. She just kept telling us that over and over and over. And after a while, we started believing it. What happened? Schools got integrated. The white teachers never tell the blacks that you can make it, and push them and push them and push them. And they don't get that. My kids never got that. Never, any of them. They all went to school. They all went to professional school, and they all did quite well. But nobody, they got pushed at home.
They had another role model, didn't your kids?
Yeah, I had my wife.
And maybe you.
She's an educator, yeah. And but I think the Brown case changed America, because as a result of that decision, the Congress of the United States passed the 1964 Civil Rights Act, prohibiting discrimination and travel in the buses and the airlines and the restaurants, and you could go on, public accommodations, and on and on and on. That was a result of Brown versus the Board of Education. Then we had the 1965 Civil Rights Act, 1967. And then states such as West Virginia passed civil rights legislation. copying it off of the federal statutes. That is, we copied them from, I know because we worked in it. And here again, not to try to be fair, some of our hardest workers for us, when we finally got this Civil Rights Act passed, or the West Virginia Human Rights Act voted on by the legislature, I can remember Senator Nelson. One senator I can particularly was Senator Kaufman from Charleston. And we had 3 or 4 senators and maybe a dozen people in the House, and they weren't black, they were white, and they without them we couldn't have made it. The Women's League of Women's Voters, AFL-CIO, and just black people, and we just kept going. We had something on paper with nothing in '61, but '67, it finally, we knew we had it. And one of the senators called us, me in Huntington, and said, this case is coming before the Senate in the morning. We want, you all drove us crazy, that we want you here. I said, tomorrow morning? Yes, we want you here. We want every seat filled. And I said, well, what are you talking? That's what we want. I said, I'll see what I can do. I got on the phone until, I guess, 1 o'clock. Charlestown. I said, you got to come to Charleston. Just give me 1 busload of you, 1 carload. Morgantown, I called. Charleston in the morning, in the Senate. You got to be there. What are you talking about this time? I said, you got to be there. Fairmont, let's go. I remember this place here, Greenbrier County, Mr. Crump. I said, you got to be in Charleston in the morning for the vote on the West Virginia Human Rights Act. I can't. I said, yes, you can. He says, I got snow. I said, I don't care how many inches you got. You got to be here in the morning. Bluefield, Logan. I just kept calling. I said, I want you there, and I want you there an hour early before the Senate convenes. And I got there, and I saw 500 black faces. They weren't from Charleston. They were from West Virginia. As a happiest light, we all cried. I was so happy that meant so much to them that they would get out of bed at 1 o'clock in the morning. Those are the old days, and you couldn't drive to Charleston in 2 hours in those days. And start driving to Charleston to be there and to push and pray that they would, that's what it meant to us. Our people, they cried. You asked me about it, they cried. And it was the happiest moment. It was not so much the act, but what it meant to African Americans in the state of West Virginia, whose population at that time was probably 5 or 6%. And we were just like we'd been, I guess, released from prison, just like the slaves were. I think that's how we felt about it.
A lot of the rhetoric of the civil rights movement of the early '60s was rhetoric reminiscent of the slave days. Free
no
again,
question.
Thank God Almighty, free at last.
No question. I remember trying a case for black railroad people before the Human Rights Commission, a lawyer, administrative law judge. Black firemen and conductors and engineers, the railroad, the NAACP Railroad, plus the union. The case was in court for 10 years. Black people, they went to the Supreme Court back and forth. Almost put me out in bankruptcy because they didn't have the money. And finally, we won. The Supreme Court ruled in our favor. And they wanted their jobs back. And this is the highest moment, I think, in my life in the civil rights. It's a sad one, but it's the highest one I think I ever had. And they came, and they were railroad people, okay, railroad workers, engineers and things like that. They had their Sunday suit, they had the clothes on, neat, just clean, as we say. And there's a press conference and everybody there, and the guys were talking to each other and says, when I go in Monday, this white guy, old Tom Smith, and I'm gonna bump him. And he said, I'll be the happiest time of my life. I will be the engineer come Monday. And they were all talking like that. And these guys, I think I have 17 of them, I think. And then they said, people asked him about settlement money. They said, forget this, you take the settlement money. She says, the state of West Virginia has recognized that I'm a man. He said, I'm going to my grave. I'm happy. This decision tells me that if I stay and persevere, you'll accept me as a human being, not because of the color I have. And this guy was like 60 years old, and the tears were pouring down his, no, you could never see anything like that. These people, law-abiding, good people, just good people, family people. They didn't know about things that they go to church, and, you know, they're just good people. And they sat there, and they said, it's not about money. It's not about money. It's about, they felt that the case confirmed that they were human beings on an equal status with everybody else. That's what it meant. That's their way of doing it. And everybody was there. I think the only time I ever had litigation, I've tried many murder cases and everything else. I looked up and I didn't even know it, but somebody said, wipe your eyes. I said, not me. And I looked and I was crying. And it was that's the happiest moment I ever had in my life, to just watch them release themselves and be accepted as human beings rather than to be a slave and rather than be different simply because the color of their skin in our country.
There is some belief, at least among the white population of West Virginia, that when the U.S. Supreme Court said integrate the schools, it was as if somebody had thrown a switch and we just integrated the schools. Was it that easy?
No, we had lots of problems. Some counties went, I think McDowell County, that was one of the bad ones. We had a lot of bad counties. We sued in Cabell. No. When we talk about civil rights, we had incidents all over. We had the Corps. We had demonstrations. There were so many things that we did back there, and I had a list of them. They would go on forever. Even in the late 60s, 80%, no, more than 80%. I've got my statistics. 80% of the hotels in West Virginia would not accept blacks. White people don't know that, even to this day.
Let's talk about affirmative action.
Well, I think affirmative action per se, a lot of people misunderstand it. Most people would like to give African Americans an opportunity to, so if I should say it, to catch up. The problem is what mechanisms are used. I've never believed in quotas. I've never believed in just because you're one color that you should get a job over. But I think in our system, there has to be a place for people who not had the opportunity. You got affirmative action. You and the public knows that if you've given money to Yale or Harvard over the years, your kid's going to be accepted. Isn't that true? We don't get in that way. That's the money acceptance. And we go on and we go on. I think there are different ways of doing it. But you can get the same end result. And the nasty name is quotas. I'm talking about giving an African American the extra kick that he or she needs in order to compete in the place, in the workplace, whether it's in college. I don't think so. And I don't know people who make A's in college necessarily contribute any more to our goodwill of people in this country. I mean, just a grade by itself. Do you understand? People have to understand. You asked a black kid in New York, where does eggs come from? The kid would say, Kroger's. What do you mean, where it come from? You asked a white kid, middle class home, where do you get eggs from? What do you mean? You get them from a chicken out on a farm. That's where you get. The kid in New York's never left New York. And you can have tests. I am convinced beyond any reasonable doubt there's a bias, and it depends on who's making the test, who's taking the test, and the material that's in the test, whether or not you make high scores. If you've been in a family, for example, where your dad's a physician and your mom's this or school teacher, and they always reading and studying, and they hear and this and that, and they get this kind of thing, and they get to 11th grade and they go college part-time and this and that. I tell you, you're going to be ahead. You'll be ahead on the test every time, and I don't care what color you are, you're going to be way ahead. So I don't think that by itself. I think different ways of doing it in the workforce. But I would never, in any sense whatsoever, even consider hiring, for example, a black man. Let's really put it down where it ought to be. A black man being a captain of an airline. You think I want you to make a guy a captain of one of those huge planes because he's black? That's extreme. That's an extreme, but I'm telling you, I want somebody that's qualified. And how do you qualify? You make programs and things to give that potential black pilot an opportunity to be able to do it just as well as the white fella.
Professional schools in recent times have been grappling with the concept of affirmative action, although I don't know that they label it that way, out of a belief that sometimes you need to kick the system a little bit so that you will have some black lawyers or black physicians or whatever else it may be. Does that cause you concern that they would do that?
No, absolutely not. I don't think in America, would you like every chemist in America to be white male? In America, if you go by the test, the people, the white-oriented test that you get into college, the only people who would go to the finest schools in this country would be white males, 90%. Is that what we want in this great country of ours? Is that what we want?
Diversity has value simply because of diversity, does it not?
Yes, but everybody brings something to the table. There are all kinds of things that come to the table, whether you studied in science or the arts or literature. I played football, and I support it in college now, but I think a person that in the music department is just as important as the one that's in the medical department. I think that's what a great country is about, and I think that's what life's about.
Herbert Henderson, civil rights activist, attorney, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The Law Works is produced in cooperation with the West Virginia State Bar, the Mountain State Bar, the West Virginia Trial Lawyers Association, the Defense Trial Council of West Virginia, and the West Virginia University College of Law.
The Law Works is made possible by the generous support of the West Virginia State Bar, the West Virginia Trial Lawyers Association, the Defense Trial Council of West Virginia, and by ALPS, providing protection and peace of mind for West Virginia attorneys and their clients for more than 15 years. And FindLaw, offering an online directory of more than 1 million attorneys, plus self-help legal guides for consumers and businesses. Find answers, find lawyers, find law on the internet at findlaw.com.
This has been a production of West Virginia Public Broadcasting.